I shouldn't be thinking like this. Not about him. Not while my husband is upstairs, oblivious, busy with meetings and speeches, trusting me completely. But the moment he walked through the door, his suitcase in hand, that familiar grin lighting up the room, I felt it. A pull I couldn't ignore. It's been months since anyone looked at me the way he does. With ease, with curiosity, with something that feels dangerously like desire. And now, here he is, staying for a week. A week in this quiet, gilded house where I've been surviving on polite conversation and empty dinners. I told myself I was imagining it at first, that he's just being friendly. But the way he laughs at my jokes, the way his hand lingers when he hands me a glass of wine, it's electric. It makes me aware of my own body in a way I've forgotten. The first night he stayed over, I couldn't sleep. The house always sounds different when we have guests. The floors settle louder, the air feels heavier. Every small movement echoes through the halls. But this time, it wasn't the noise keeping me awake. It was the awareness. He was down the corridor, one wall between us. At breakfast the next morning, my husband was already distracted, phone pressed to his ear, half listening, half present. I poured coffee. He thanked me absently. Routine, predictable. Then his best friend walked in. He looked rested, comfortable, like he belonged here. "Good morning," he said, but he didn't look at my husband first. He looked at me. It was subtle, so subtle no one else would notice, but I did. He held my gaze half a second longer than necessary. Not inappropriate, not obvious, just enough to register. Physical cue. My stomach tightened. He complimented the breakfast. Asked if I'd slept well. My husband answered for me before I could respond. We all laughed. It should have ended there. But later that afternoon, when my husband left for another meeting, the house grew quiet again. Too quiet. I found myself in the kitchen, reorganizing cabinets that didn't need reorganizing. I heard footsteps behind me. "I didn't realize how isolating this place could be," he said gently. I froze for a fraction of a second before turning around. "It's not," I replied too quickly. "You get used to it." He stepped closer to the counter, leaning his hip against it. Casual, relaxed, but closer than he needed to be. Another physical cue. The scent of his cologne reached me, clean, understated, familiar from years of shared holidays and events. But now it felt amplified. Internal reminder. This is your husband's closest friend. I straightened, putting distance between us by reaching for a glass that didn't need washing. "It must be lonely sometimes," he added quietly. That word, lonely. I shouldn't have answered honestly, but I did. "There are worse things," I said, keeping my eyes on the sink. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, not yet, just thick. He stepped closer to take the towel from my hand. Our fingers brushed. It could have been accidental. It probably was. But neither of us pulled away immediately. Hesitation. The contact lasted less than a second, long enough for heat to travel up my arm, long enough for my pulse to betray me. I withdrew first. Rationalization began instantly. "It's nothing. You're reacting because you've been starved of attention. This is about you, not him." He cleared his throat and stepped back, giving me space. Respectful, controlled. That restraint unsettled me more than boldness would have. If he had flirted openly, I could have shut it down. If he had crossed a clear boundary, I could have drawn one. Instead, He stayed just inside the lines. Later that evening, we found ourselves alone again in the study. My husband was upstairs on another call. The door was open. The lights were low. We sat on opposite ends of the sofa at first. Opposite ends. Then closer. Not touching, but close enough that I could hear the rhythm of his breathing between sentences. He told me stories from years ago, before the campaigns, before the pressure. He remembered details about me that my husband no longer mentions. "You used to laugh more," he said softly. Physical cue. I felt seen. Internal warning. This is how it starts. I should have stood up. I didn't. Instead, I asked him what else he remembered. And the space between us shrank by inches. I pretended not to notice. By the third night, the house felt smaller. My husband had flown out for an overnight conference, a last-minute obligation. He apologized with a distracted kiss on my forehead, already halfway out the door when he said goodbye. The front door closed. Silence followed. It was just the two of us now. I told myself nothing would change, that I was capable of managing proximity, that I understood boundaries better than this. But boundaries are theoretical when you're alone, in a quiet house, with someone who looks at you like you're still visible. We had dinner at the long table meant for 12. We sat at the same end, closer than necessary. He poured the wine. Our knees brushed under the table. Physical cue. I felt it instantly. Heat through fabric, subtle but deliberate in its stillness. Internal reminder. Move your leg. I didn't. I told myself shifting would make it obvious, that stillness was safer, that if neither of us acknowledged it, it didn't mean anything. We kept talking. About nothing important. About the absurdity of public life. About how exhausting it is to always perform. He said my name quietly, almost thoughtfully. "You don't have to perform with me." There it was, the thing I had been circling. Hesitation settled in my chest. I looked at him fully this time. His expression wasn't playful. It wasn't reckless. It was careful. And that made it worse. I pulled my leg back slowly, breaking the contact. My pulse thudded in my ears. "This is inappropriate," I said softly. Not accusing, just factual. He didn't argue. He leaned back in his chair, giving space. I know. Silence. The kind that hums. Rationalization crept in again, smooth and dangerous. We're just talking. Acknowledging tension isn't acting on it. Adults can handle discomfort. After dinner, I went to the study to return a book to the shelf. I heard him behind me again. Too close. The room felt warmer than the rest of the house. Dim lighting, heavy curtains. The door wasn't fully closed, but it wasn't wide open either. Physical cue. His hand brushed lightly against my lower back as he reached past me for a file on the desk. It could have been an accident, but his fingers lingered a fraction too long. My breath caught. Internal alarm. Step away. I didn't. Instead, I turned toward him, and now we were face to face. Close enough that I could see the faint tension in his jaw. "You deserve more than silence," he said quietly. The words landed deeper than they should have. I thought of the nights I'd gone to bed alone, the way my husband falls asleep with his phone still glowing beside him, the way conversations have become logistics. Loneliness pressed against my ribs. Hesitation. This is still a choice. I should have said something firm, something final. Instead, I whispered, "That's not your place to say." But my voice lacked strength. He didn't touch me again. He just stood there, close enough that our breaths began to sync. I could feel the warmth from his body, the subtle shift of air between us. Time stretched. Rationalization whispered, "You haven't done anything. You're just standing here." His hand lifted slowly, not to grab, not to claim, but to rest lightly at my waist. Everything inside me tightened. Internal reminder: if you let this continue, there is no pretending later. My fingers trembled at my sides. He said my name again, soft, careful, and I didn't move away. His hand was still at my waist, not gripping, not urgent, just resting there, warm, steady, intentional. Physical cue. My body reacted before my mind could intervene. A slow inhale, a subtle shift forward instead of back. Internal reminder: this is the line. The study felt impossibly quiet, the air thick. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the far wall, each second stretching wider than the last. He searched my face like he was waiting for permission he didn't want to ask for directly. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. Hesitation flooded me. If I told him to stop, this would end. The tension, the attention, the feeling of being wanted instead of managed. If I didn't, my husband's face flashed in my mind. The vows, the years, the trust so absolute it had become invisible. And yet, beneath that, another truth pulsed. I had been starving, not just physically, emotionally, silently. Rationalization rose fast and smooth. This is about feeling seen, about being alive again. It doesn't have to mean more than that. His thumb shifted slightly against my waist. The smallest movement, but it ignited something reckless in me. I placed my hand against his chest, not pushing him away, just touching, testing. His breathing changed instantly, slower, deeper. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Internal alarm. If you lean in, everything changes. He leaned closer first, just enough that the space between us thinned to almost nothing. I could feel his breath near my cheek, warm, controlled, waiting. Time fractured. There was no room left for denial, no plausible innocence. This wasn't accidental proximity anymore. This was choice suspended in midair. My fingers tightened slightly against his shirt. I should step back. I should say his name sharply. I should remember who I am. Instead, my eyes closed for a fraction of a second. And in that second, I felt it. The almost. His forehead brushed mine. Barely. A whisper of contact. The line was right there. One breath away from disappearing completely. And then, a sharp sound shattered the silence. The front door, opening. Both of us froze instantly. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Not imagined, not distant, real. His hand dropped from my waist so fast it felt like a burn. I stepped back abruptly, nearly stumbling against the desk. My husband's voice carried faintly through the corridor. "I forgot my folder." Panic surged through me, not because we had crossed the line, but because we had almost. And almost felt worse. The study door was still half closed. My pulse roared in my ears as he walked closer. The handle turned. For one suspended second, I wondered what he would see on my face, what he would sense in the air between us, whether guilt has a scent. The door opened fully. My husband stepped in, distracted, scanning the desk. He didn't look at us immediately. We stood on opposite sides of the room now. Space reinstalled, air cooler, expressions controlled. But my hands were trembling. He grabbed the folder. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Interrupt. The word sliced through me. He smiled briefly at both of us and left as quickly as he'd entered. The front door closed again. Silence returned. But it wasn't the same silence. We didn't move toward each other. We didn't speak. The reality had shifted. This wasn't just tension anymore. This was danger. He looked at me differently now. Not hungry, not reckless. Aware. We can't, he said quietly. I nodded, but the nod didn't feel convincing. Because what terrified me most wasn't that we had almost crossed the line. It was how much I had wanted to. And the week wasn't over. After the door closed again, neither of us moved for several seconds. The air felt contaminated. Not because anything had happened, but because something almost had. I became acutely aware of my reflection in the glass cabinet across the room. My hair slightly disheveled, my lips parted, my breathing uneven. Evidence without proof. He stepped back first this time, deliberate, controlled. That can't happen again, he said quietly. Physical cue. His voice had changed. Less warmth, more distance. Internal reaction. Relief should feel stronger than this. But it didn't. Instead, something hollow opened in my chest. I nodded, folding my arms across myself, as if that could restore boundaries. It won't. The words sounded responsible. They didn't sound honest. The next morning, everything felt painfully normal. Breakfast, coffee, polite conversation. My husband was cheerful, unaware. He mentioned how grateful he was that his best friend could stay the whole week. How nice it was that I had company while he worked. Company. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Across the table, his best friend didn't look at me at all. Not once. Physical cue. The absence of his gaze unsettled me more than his attention ever had. Internal reminder. This is good. Distance is good. But my body disagreed. The day passed in careful choreography. We were never alone. Doors remained open. Conversations stayed neutral. And yet, the memory of his hand at my waist replayed in microscopic detail. The almost had imprinted itself into me. That evening, my husband left again. Another dinner, another obligation. He kissed my cheek and thanked his friend for keeping me entertained. The front door closed. Silence returned. We stayed in separate rooms for nearly an hour. I tried reading. The words blurred. I tried calling a friend. I hung up before he connected. Footsteps approached slowly down the hallway. He stopped at the entrance of the living room, but didn't step inside. We need to talk, he said. Physical cue. The steadiness in his tone made my pulse spike. Internal alarm. Talking leads back to feeling. I know, I answered. He didn't move closer. That restraint again. It forced me to cross the distance instead. I stood, walked toward him, stopped several feet away. Safe. I'm leaving tomorrow, he said quietly. The words hit harder than they should have. That wasn't the plan. It is now. Silence stretched between us. Rationalization rose automatically. That's for the best. Clean exit. No damage done. But beneath it, Something resisted. "You're running," I said before I could stop myself. His jaw tightened. "I'm protecting him." The simplicity of that sentence stole the air from my lungs. Internal conflict surged violently. Because that's what I should have been doing too. Protecting my marriage, protecting the life we built. Instead, I had leaned in. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch, but enough to feel. "One more minute," he said quietly, just to say it out loud so it doesn't follow us. My heart pounded. Internal reminder, this is still a choice. "What are you saying?" I whispered. His eyes held mine fully now. No games, no subtlety. That if things were different, he paused, controlled himself, but they're not. Physical cue. His hand lifted slightly, then dropped back to his side. He wasn't going to touch me. That decision almost hurt. Hesitation trembled through me. I could step back, end this cleanly. Instead, I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth between us again. "We're not doing anything," I said softly. The sentence sounded like justification disguised as restraint. His breath shifted. The space between us shrank 2 inches. Again, not touching, but close enough that the memory of the study came roaring back. Time slowed. If someone walked in now, if my husband returned early, if a single phone rang, we would have no defense left. My chest rose and fell unevenly. "This is goodbye," he said quietly. But neither of us moved. And for one suspended, dangerous second, I wasn't sure whether goodbye meant distance or surrender. I went to bed alone that night. He leaves in the morning. My husband is still unaware. Nothing happened. And yet, everything almost did. The line is technically intact, but it feels thinner now, fragile. And I don't know whether I'm relieved or disappointed. If you've ever stood one breath away from changing your entire life, tell me in the comments. Like this video, share it with someone who understands silent temptation, and most importantly, subscribe. Because sometimes the most dangerous affairs are the ones that almost happen.